Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Caroline Colas, and I am the Senior Director of Health and Wellness at the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan. And today on the Positive Psychology Hour, a series that we do in partnership with the Whole Being Institute, I have my dear friend, Dr. Sherry Kelly, with us, and she's going to be talking about how we can use positive psychology to manage holiday stress. It's that time of year again where the sun goes down earlier and the days are darker, and we often feel pressured to be festive when we actually might feel the exact opposite, which is kind of anxious. Right? Some of us try to squeeze in a myriad of social engagements around Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, New Year's Eve, while others just anxiously avoid or dread the holidays altogether. And of course, there's lots of in between there too. We're going to learn how to manage expectations of the season through understanding of the powerful impact of stress can have on the nervous system and on the brain and our health. With positive psychology tips that are going to help us care for ourselves and those we love during the holidays. Stress doesn't always have to bring out the worst in us. In fact, a little bit of stress helps get us activated, and Dr. Kelly's going to talk about that. So we want to remember to practice self-compassion and recognize the signs of stress building up so that we can take extra care of ourselves by eating well, exercising, getting enough sleep, and sometimes maybe even just doing less. Sherry Schuyler Kelly, PhD, is a clinical psychologist and neuropsychologist with more than 30 years of experience in the field of child development and health psychology. She earned her doctorate in health psychology from Yeshiva University and is a former National Institutes of Health and National Cancer Institute Fellow in psycho-oncology and neuropsychology. She's based in West Hartford, Connecticut, also down in Florida. She's best known for her research with teens and young adults on resilience, hope, and cancer survivorship. She is leading an event tonight at the JCC, which is basically a walk around the brain to give us an idea of how our brain works. So if you find what she's talking about today fascinating, join us this evening for a more in-depth look of how our brain works. And I'll put a link in the chat. Welcome to the call, Dr. Kelly. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to ask you to unmute and lead us in a little mindfulness break if you want to start.
I will. I'm going to start a mindfulness break that we're actually going to come back to in the middle of our talk today. But right now, I want you to do something. I want you to, if you can, close your eyes, take a deep breath into your belly, and imagine, if you will, that child you remember during the holiday season and from years ago. Try to bring up a memory of maybe a scent, maybe of pine trees or chestnuts on the sidewalk in New York, or snow crunching, or bells ringing, or the beautiful lights of the menorah twinkling. Maybe it's the taste of latkes with applesauce and cinnamon that you remember, and how you felt. Maybe it was the wonder of that time. Maybe you were feeling excitement for getting gifts or seeing family members. Maybe it's being with your grandmother. Try to think of the good memories you had and what happened also to that playful child within you. Where is that? Can you maybe tap into that sense of playfulness and wonder? And try to remember that. And let that feeling energize you today. That wonder, that excitement, the love that you felt maybe from your family members at the time, or a grandma or grandpa, and just the senses that were excited by the season. And that's what I want you to feel today. And if not all day, maybe just in this hour. And if not in the hour, in this moment. Thank you. That's what I'm going to leave you with for now. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining Caroline and I on this journey today to explore stress during the holidays. And thanks very much to WBI and Phoebe Atkinson, who, along with Caroline, invited me to be with you today and share. So I'm going to try to pop out of this view and go into my speaker view. Oh, Caroline, I don't know how to pop out. I'm just going to, oops, I'm in full screen. I don't know how to do this. So I'm going to try to pop out and see if I can just
Okay.
go to one. Because we did this before and now I can't get my share screen
Your
up.
view
So
back. Okay. Well, while you're working on that, do you want me to read some notes from the chat
yeah,
about where
I want you
people
to
are?
do that. Yeah.
Sure. So we
Here
were
we are.
asking about the holidays, and Ellen was saying more loss and being alone, not stress, much less than in the past, though.
So,
Vincent's calling in from Singapore. It's now 1 a.m. where he is. Wow. And Ellen has gratitude for her blessings. Elaine is calling in from Philadelphia, being with friends and family. Nancy
oh,
from Madison, yeah, Madison, Connecticut, being with friends and family and small groups is what she appreciates about the holidays. Elizabeth Bardwell is calling in from Rye. Happy holidays. Most looking forward to spending time with my daughters. Amy's in Kansas, I think, right, Amy? Looking forward to son arriving from Austin. Wow, that's always
all
nice. And
right.
Elizabeth says she remembers my grandma's perfume and the presents. And Alejandro says, hi from Mexico City, feeling blessed to be here.
Oh, thank you for sharing, everyone. I love that. I love remembering grandma's perfume. Oh, that's really sweet. Can everyone see the screen?
No,
You
we
can't
can
see
see
my,
you, but we can't see your screen yet.
okay, can you see that?
Nope.
Okay, hold on. All right. Well, Caroline, I am so sorry. I am
Do
going
you
to
want to
try.
send it to me and then I'll share it?
Well, we'll just do this again. You still hear me, right? And
Yeah, we see you. You're
okay,
spotlighted.
here I am. Here I am. So I'm just going to try to share screen again, okay?
Sure.
Bear with me, everybody.
There
All
we
right,
go.
here we are. And I just need to kick this over. Okay. There you go. All right, I'm going to kick this over. All right, can you see it now?
Yes, but you wanted to start at the beginning?
Well, I'm going to start right here because this is
Okay.
really the first slide. So the best way to tackle stress is to understand it. And what I want to go through, what is stress? So the next time you're feeling stressed, I want you to stop for a second and take a breath and ask yourself, what is stress? And I'm going to give you one of the answers in the next slide. But stress is sort of, a group of things that happen to us. It's irritation. There's a physical stress, like if you scratch yourself on your hand or pinch yourself, that's stress. It's an irritation. It's a response to a demand, an environmental demand. It can be a demand from someone else. Stress can also be real or an imagined threat. It can be a physical challenge. Stress is a biological response set where your body rallies to a threat or to a demand or to make a change or to get to safety or to get into gear to fight something or get into gear to avoid something. So we look at this as both a biological response set and a physical response set. So what is stress? And I learned this at Kripalu from the guru many years ago. Stress is resistance to what is. So the next time that you're feeling stressed, I want you to stop, take a breath, pause, and think about, what am I resisting? That's an interesting concept. What are you resisting? Are you resisting something you don't want to do? Is it resistance to someone that might be not pleasant? Are you resisting something that is uncomfortable for you? Are you resisting starting something that you're anxious about, like holiday shopping or buying presents for your coworkers or going to a party you really don't want to go to? Or is it the stress of maybe going to a family event and seeing that difficult relative you don't want to get into an argument with? So stress is resistance to what is, will allow you to manage your stress in a new way. Everyone with me on that? Okay. So stress is also not something that happens to us. It's also our response to what happens. And guess what? The response is something that you can choose. So feeling that you have more power over the stress will help you manage it better. Does that make sense? Okay. So, stress can really impact our well-being in many ways. And these are the factors that can impact us. We tend to focus on external things, not on what we need or our emotional regulation. We look for quick fixes that can often be unhealthy. We lose sight of our goals. We lose a lack of intention. We feel helpless or hopeless. We feel a lack of support or isolation. And sometimes when we're stressed, we isolate ourselves. And that's not always a good thing. So here are the leading causes of stress that have been studied: money, work, health, and family conflicts. And during the holidays, you can really see how these stress factors all get amplified. So how do we first address stress besides, cognitively, where I asked you to figure out, well, what might you be resisting? But you have to also give yourself permission to be human, permission to know that stress is a normal biological and cognitive function that we have for survival. Permission to feel afraid, permission to feel conflicted. You might feel conflicted about going to that holiday party. You might not want to see that relative or that frenemy of yours that you're not comfortable with. And permission for your kids just to be kids, which is really hard at this time during COVID and Omicron and, Delta variants and restrictions and the other things that are making this time of year difficult. And then something good for yourself is to be permission or give yourself permission to be grateful, because studies have shown that gratitude actually can light up your brain. It can actually help mitigate stress by practicing gratitude. It can actually impact the chemistry of your brain, can lower your heart rate. It can lower your stress hormones. So gratitude practice is something that I want you to allow yourself to partake in. So what are the effects of stress? We all have it. Like I said, it's a biological response to a number of demands, to threats, to changes. But how can we avoid the often harmful effects of stress? Well, one is, don't do the quick fixes, because the quick fixes are those that often get us into trouble, like overeating, overindulging, overconsuming, overshopping. By understanding stress, we can generate strategies to avert the negative effects and buffer or mediate these effects. So stress research is not new. It's actually something that's almost 100 years old. And it arose out of studies with veterans from World War I. We have studied the stress in terms of anxiety, stress in terms of what are protective factors and risk factors. So a risk factor are those quick fixes I told you about. The protective factors are getting support, engaging in healthy activities like exercise, meditation, getting social support. Twin studies found, the people have studied, researchers in psychology and neurology studied twins and who are genetically similar but may have been separated and lived in different places or different families, or twins that are maybe engaged in very different activities and how stress impacts them. And this leads to understanding stress and resilience. Who has grit? Who has hardiness? That's the Lazarus and Folkman studies in the 80s. And then we get into more like, what is resilience? What's coping? How do we best cope with stress? And one of the things that we're really learning now is that stress, can be good because it sort of builds up a type of psychological immune system in us that allows us to broaden and build our coping and resiliency. So, our brains are meant for stress and are in many ways developed and shaped by stress. I'm going to talk about the brain tonight. But when we think about stress, our entire brain's engaged in the processing of it and then the reactivity of stress. A big part of where we handle stress in the brain is in the center of it. And there's a switching station where we get all kinds of feedback from the environment, where we process stimuli from the environment, and then where we switch back in how to respond. And a big part of that switching station is the limbic system. And that's really the core of where a lot of stress is processed. So if you're looking at this diagram, I hope it's not too overwhelming, but you can see that we take in information from the environment. It tells us to rally, or it tells us to run away, or it tells us this isn't right, this doesn't feel right. And really a symphony of different processes in the brain gets to work. And one of the things that I'm sure you all have heard about is our adrenaline, our adrenal glands get pumped up, and we start this process of getting the body engaged to fight the stressor or to react to the stressor. But you can see that there are a lot of processes involved in it. So, our nervous system, picks up on it, sends off alarm bells. Our blood pressure rises, ready to fight the perceived threat. Our muscles tense, so we have musculoskeletal system. Our muscles get tense. It can trigger headaches. The respiratory system gets engaged. Our breathing accelerates. Our cardiovascular system gets engaged and our heart rate increases. And then our endocrine system, the adrenals, signals are sent from the glands to the body to cause a release of cortisol into the body to fight that perceived threat. And then our GI system gets involved. Some of you can even feel that your stomach might start rumbling, or you start having stomach pains. Some of us get migraines also with the nervous system. You get butterflies in your stomach. You might even feel your whole blood chemistry change when you're stressed out. So what are our choices? And we have choices. Caroline, I'm just going to stop right here. Are there any questions before I go on?
No, we just had a few comments where Esther was talking about permission to say no sometimes, right?
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about that. That's a big one. Setting boundaries. Exactly. And what choices you have.
And then Benny was just sharing that, she used to have a really large party during the holidays, but, some of her friends have gone to their great reward. Others have moved or become a little strange or whatever. And she's learned to just accept that and do something special for herself during the holidays. And she also has a birthday a couple of days afterwards and shares that with a couple of colleagues and her and that's when it's family time. So that was, I thought, just a great example of what you were talking about,
That's
where
lovely.
you accept, right? You're not
Yes,
resisting the stress.
accept. And so here are 4 ways that we can deal with the stress. One is to avoid the stressor. So you can just avoid that holiday party, for example, or avoid the mad rush to shop in person. That's another example. Or we can avoid it by putting the stressor in a positive light. Okay, how can I think about this holiday party differently? Or how can I think about this get together in a new way? And then ask yourself, will this have a long-term impact? Or is it just one evening? Does this stressor really matter 3 months from now or 1 year? And that's what you have to weigh and decide. You can
And
second, go ahead.
yeah, I was going to say, Joy brought up a really wonderful comment, which I would love for you, doing your research on just oncology and everything to comment on, which is a situation that a lot of us can find ourselves in, or those that we love. She said, ill health is difficult to accept. And yet that is what you're talking about, right? With alter the stressor or
all
adapt to the
kinds of
stressor.
all kinds of stressors, whether it's something as unimportant as shopping for your holiday gifts for your family or dealing with a serious medical condition. There are people that avoid the stressors by denying it, and that's not always a good thing. There are people that decide to look at the stressor in a different light. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the illness aspect of it. One of the things with serious illness is that many people find that the serious illness experience or having that experience finally gives them permission to say no or to set boundaries that they, things they should have done long ago. But in some ways, people are empowered through it and say to themselves, now I'm really going to focus on me and I'm going to do what's really important for myself. And there's a reevaluation of values and what you need to do to take care of yourself. Does that make sense? I hope so. Carolyn, I hope you can hear
Yeah,
me.
absolutely. Absolutely, that makes sense. And I think that it is acceptance is part of the journey, right? Because when we haven't accepted it or come to terms with something, we're fighting it.
We're fighting it. And I would love to do an entire webinar on that, on dealing with illness. I would, I've spent most of my adult life studying that, and I would
Sure.
love to share that with you. So what we were just talking about was altering the stressor, learning to say no to things, changing the way you're working with the stressor, and then adapting to the stressor. So look, that's more positive. Look at how the stressor can be a positive. I might have a lot of work, but if I do well, it might mean a promotion. Or, I've got a lot of homework to do, but if I do it, it means I'm going to get that good grade, or I'm going to get that internship. Or looking at, yes, it's really difficult to make a holiday dinner for my relatives, but I didn't get to see them for 2 years because of COVID. So now I'm going to be able to see them. Or I want to do this for my kids or my grandkids. I want to teach my granddaughter how to make those latkes or how to bake those cookies. And I want to make a memory for my kids or grandkids. And then accepting the stressor by finding other outlets to handle it, whether it's a venting session with your friends, working out, developing a tolerance to it, and then letting go of things you can't control. And that's huge, is knowing what things you can control and what you can't control.
Ellen was saying, Karen Drucker has a great song, No is the New Yes.
Oh,
And
yes.
yeah, and Elizabeth was saying that she noticed with her sisters that they deny stressors, and she's starting to set boundaries, and it feels really good and peaceful.
Oh, good, Elizabeth. That's really good, because you need to. And that's that's empowering yourself in so many ways. So, the stress we feel during the holidays is really kind of the acute short-term stress. We feel this surge of adrenaline, and we've got to get everything done. And that's one of the reasons why we feel so tired in January. The more disturbing stress is the chronic stress. And that's why I have the picture of this car with the car alarm, because that's like your car alarm going off continually, and it's going to drain your battery, if you get that metaphor. So, the chronic stress causes excessive secretion of stress hormones, and it can have serious health implications down the road. It can impact your overall physical health. It even can affect your memory. It takes a toll. The acute stress, like I said, there's an immediate physiological response, like your heart rate and blood pressure, muscle tension. There's an emotional shift to deal with it. We are dealing with processing the threat. All of our sensory systems are in play. And then there's the fear factor of, I'm going to miss something. I'm going to forget something. I'm going to get in trouble for not doing this, or I'm going to get in trouble if my end of year work doesn't get done. You're processing stress and anxiety at the same time. The chronic stress is what I was talking about that can lead to long-term problems like physiological changes in sleep that can cause, chronic sleep disturbance, can impact your health. It can affect your immune system, your cognition and memory, and it can lead us down a path of engaging in dangerous behaviors that are quick fixes for the stress, like overindulging, smoking, drinking too much, avoidance behaviors to deal with the stress that can lead to spending money, for example, or shopping over consuming in many different ways. So people often ask, well, what's the role of cortisol? And cortisol is a stress hormone. And it's, people think it's all bad, but it's not. It's part of our internal alarm system. So it's a part of our natural body processes. It's about balance. Cortisol wants to be in balance. And it tries to shift back into balance after it's been rallied during a stressful event. Cortisol also helps regulate our blood sugar levels in our cells. And cortisol actually has influence on the hippocampus, which is involved in our memory storage and memory processing, and mediators of stress effects on it. So again, we get this input of the stressor. It goes through our sensory systems down into that middle part of our brain, through the hypothalamus, into the pituitary glands, which, really is like the middle of the brain, and it's telling the body and the rest of the brain to rally, prepare for action. And that's how we're feeling like our whole body is involved in a stress situation. So as I was just wrapping up, stress can impact learning, memory, emotions, organization. You might, even have problems organizing when you're stressed out, and your behavior. And this leads to something that we were alluding to earlier called the tunnel vision effect. Maybe some of you have heard about that. So when we're really stressed out, our brains kind of go into this tunnel vision mode where we hyper focus and we can't see the big picture. This also happens when we're really stressed, or when we're really sick, or when we get a bad diagnosis. Some women experience this when they're pregnant, and they just have to focus on nesting and getting ready for the baby. So the brain tries to limit how much we receive and keeps us from being overwhelmed. But at the same time, it gives us this tunnel vision effect where we can't see the big picture. In some ways, it's protective. It's protecting us from emotional overload, but we miss out on some stuff. If you have PTSD and are triggered by events or by memories or things in the environment that come up, especially during the holidays, we have a greater propensity to become depressed and engage in unhealthy behaviors, and there's a larger, susceptibility or vulnerability for suicide amongst people with PTSD. This is a study with a PET scan of PTSD versus non-PTSD people in the scanner, and you can see that the great difference of brain activation. So if you have PTSD, it can be triggered by times of heightened stress. It can also be triggered by times where, the initial trauma occurred. Stress, situational stressors can contribute to the post-traumatic stress disorder and make it even worse. So, we're constantly working with our brain, and the brain's working with us, and it's this balance. And sometimes we feel like, we have to push our inner selves up a big hill to get through this time of year. So how do we best understand stress? How do we manage it? Let's understand it. So that's the answer, by understanding it. So you feel more empowered over the stress. Here are some really good ways to manage the stress, which I'm sure all of you know because you're here in this audience. Breathing techniques, getting that oxygen to your brain, regulating your heart rate through breathing. Breathing also can have an impact on hormones, not only stress hormones, but hormones related to aging too. Meditation, taking those mindful moments. Yoga is a wonderful way to engage the mind and the body in addressing stress. Exercise, and the type of exercise that's aerobic, fast-paced, moving, trying to get into the flow if you can, of being highly challenged and highly in control, getting that heart rate up. A typical, yardstick of if you're getting enough exercise. 30 minutes of walking at a brisk pace is really great, 30 minutes a day. And 30 minutes to music that's fast-paced, like disco music. Someone actually did a study on that, that disco music was really good for exercising. Music and movement, so engaging your body and your brain with music, and music has a rhythm to it that puts our processing center inside the brain in a rhythm and in a cadence that helps us feel less depressed. And then finally, social support. Social support and managing stress has been studied. You can Google all these different studies on it. Social support is so important in managing stress. So one of the things I want you to think about is this funny slide. When you're feeling stressed out, what are your emotions? What are you feeling? And to remember that emotions aren't good or bad. Please stop judging your emotions. Emotions are alarm bells or signals that are trying to tell you something. So the next time you feel stressed out, or you feel an emotion like anger or grief, or if you're feeling frustrated, what are these emotions trying to tell us? It's bringing our body to attend to something. It's making us attend to something that's going on in the environment or within us. Something might be off balance. So what's this feeling trying to tell me? And during this time of Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa, New Year, whatever you might be celebrating, I want you to think about this. And we started off with this mindfulness moment, but close your eyes and imagine the younger you, the child who needs love and care. And breathe deeply in that moment and visualize what you might need. A lot of us are actually very triggered by this time of year because a lot of memories come up. In psychology, we call this an anniversary reaction. And just to know that that's not uncommon, that that's something that really happens, that we have those stored memories. Don't judge yourself on those feelings. A lot of us, never grew up having that Hallmark card moment or maybe we didn't have a family, or maybe our family was a family full of anger or negativity or distrust. And we don't have that. And we might be grieving for that childhood Hanukkah or Christmas or other holiday celebration that we never had. We might be grieving for what we didn't have. And that can happen. And that's really common. And that's one of the reasons why people feel depressed during this time of year. It's not only because of the stress, but it's also grieving for what they may not have had. Maybe it's grieving for what they no longer have, or what they lost, or what they wanted to have. So, understanding that and allowing space for all those feelings and senses will help you manage it better. Carolyn, I'm going to just stop right here and see if anyone has a question.
Okay, any questions? Please put them in the chat. I asked everybody, what do you do to release stress? And Ellen said, meditation, dance, being with friends and families. I said, of course, Nia, which is moving and dancing. I also find just simply breathing that, I can get me back from sort of breathing up in my chest to breathe deep down into my belly, and that helps a lot. Let's see, we've got some other answers. Amy was saying, this is so good. This is so helpful. All right. Well, we're so glad, Amy.
I'm
Anything
so glad.
else?
I do a gratitude practice. So the minute I start feeling negative or doubting myself or feeling badly or feeling sorry for myself, I just flip it. I try to flip it and think of 3 things I'm grateful for. And I can almost feel my blood chemistry change when I do that. Now, it's not being in denial of what happened in my life, or it's not being Pollyanna, if you know that character. It's just taking control and knowing that you have more power than you realize over your mind. And that by shifting your attention from the negativity to one of positivity and practicing gratitude, it can actually help you feel better. So
we've got a few comments here. Anita said, stress is the big challenge right now. Bunny said, I go for a walk, sit and realize how fortunate I am. And Vincent said something interesting, and I want you to comment. He says, I'm working with people who are going through PTSD, anxiety, and depression. They said breathing did not help them. And I have found that to be true for people that have a lot of anxiety, depending on what kind and how they're doing the breathing. Can you comment more on that, Sherry?
Yes. So Vincent, thanks for asking that question. So, everyone's PTSD experience is unique, and it's emanating from unique experiences. And I don't think there's a one, answer or one, process that works for everybody. And some people become very anxious during breathing and meditative exercises, where they don't want to be in their head. It makes them think of things that are uncomfortable, and the process of just sitting there might be very uncomfortable for them. And so there's other ways to be in a meditative zone, like walking in a meditative zone, or doing, if you have one in your local area or park, one of the mazes, or just walking to meditative guidance on your iPhone or other device, or listening to meditative music. I've worked with clients who meditate walking, and they're simply counting. They're doing counts to 10. So there are different ways to get into that zone for people with PTSD that might be more comfortable for them. Some people with PTSD need to be moving. They like to be moving. So they might find it, doing exercise is better than breathing, or working with someone on exercise. Now, there's a lot of body stuff, for lack of a better word, involved with PTSD. There's a big mind-body connection, because there's muscle memory involved. Does that make sense? I hope it does.
Yes. And Elaine said, I have a moan and move on notebook. Once I write it, I can let go
Mm,
of the negative feelings.
wow. That's great. So this is an important slide I want to share with you. We started talking about this a little bit earlier. It is very important in the management of stress to manage expectations. So this is a good time to start practicing this. Examine what your expectations are for the holidays. Are they realistic? Where are they stemming from? Is it stemming from something you never had and wanted? Is it stemming from a loss? Is it stemming from a fantasy you might have? Is it stemming from just wanting to be around loved ones? And don't judge it. Just explore your expectations, and then explore your expectations with others in your life. Maybe your expectation of the holiday is very different than your partner or your spouse or your family members, immediate or otherwise. What are their expectations of you? So one of the reasons why some people get into arguments or feel more stressed during the holidays is because their expectations don't align with what other people's expectations are of themselves or of you or of the holiday. So your partner might expect you to make a special meal or a special treat, and you don't have time for that, or you don't particularly like that. That's a very simplistic way of saying it. Or maybe, your family expects you to put on the big dinner this season, and you don't want that. Or maybe they expect you to cook a certain something and you don't want to. This is where we get into boundaries. So a nice way to segue into establishing boundaries is by first exploring expectations, because it's less accusatory, it's less threatening. If we talk about expectations in an objective way, how do you visualize Christmas? Or how do you visualize Hanukkah? How do you visualize us spending the new year? Get a sense of what your family or loved one or partner is expecting. Well, this is what I'm kind of expecting. But if you talk about it objectively in terms of expectations and not duty, it's less threatening. And then you can sort of meet it at the critical point, and then you can set the boundaries after you've explored the expectations. And then, stop trying to please everyone. It's hard enough to please myself, let alone everyone else. And then prioritize your needs at this time. This is a good time to practice it. Are there any questions on this one? This was a heavy duty slide.
No? One can be disappointed if expectations do not work out. Expect nothing, and then you are grateful for whatever is placed in front of you. I'm not a professional, but that's what works for me.
Yeah, you have to really manage your expectations. I think people have unrealistic expectations of themselves and each other during this time of year, which in large part is fueled by the media and all the commercials we see and all the wonderful holiday movies that are out there.
Elizabeth said, stemming from from traditions in my childhood, but my kids don't care that much. And that's really true. Like trying to recreate a holiday the way that you had it with everything. I know one friend, she said, I'm not a Grinch, but compared to my husband, I am. He likes to do everything, right? And every year I find myself saying, are we really going to decorate the roof too? And so, right. And she says, so I feel grumpy, but it's not that I'm grumpy. It's just he has a different relationship to it. His enthusiasm and his willingness to, create those holiday traditions are greater than mine.
And understanding the why behind it. There might be a really important why behind that. And so that's why it's important to just understand the expectations without judging them, just to understand the expectations and how you both can work with those in the family setting.
Yeah.
So,
Anita had a great question.
yeah,
Believe in the value of meditation, whether through the breath or awareness during a walk, but why is there so much resistance to it, to slowing down, to meditation, to mindfulness?
because for a lot of people, it's uncomfortable because for a lot of people, slowing down is uncomfortable. They feel they have to be constantly moving or doing. Maybe that's the way they were raised. It could be their body um, seeking movement all the time. It could just be that they need stimulation. Some people need more stimulation than others. It, there's personality factors, there's neurological factors. And then for some people that, particularly people who've experienced trauma, being quiet makes them face certain things that's uncomfortable. So there are many reasons.
Yeah, beautifully said.
So at this time, this time of year, and one of the things I love about like Hanukkah and other, celebrations, last month in India was Diwali. We have a lot of light celebrations around the world this time of year. And, one way to kind of bring that into your self-care and focus is to find that inner light. And, for people who are stressed out, maybe about having two different celebrations in their household or with their family or different celebrations, there's some commonalities. And maybe if you explore the commonalities, it will lessen the stress. And one commonality is about finding the light in your life and validating and celebrating the light in others. And how might we be able to do that? Allow yourself to laugh, find that playful inner self, even if it's, maybe your kids don't want to make that gingerbread house. Make it yourself, do it for yourself, make your own cookies or do your own arts and crafts or make your own, make latkes for yourself or try that new recipe or, make a menorah out of mason jars, if that was it. Make a new tradition, start a new tradition for yourself. Find meaning and purpose. I worked with kids and young adults who were very sick for many, many years. And I started a tradition with them where we would answer letters to Santa from the New York Post Office. And that, brought them a lot of empowerment and meaning. Yes, they weren't feeling well, but by doing something for something else, it made them feel better to know that they answered a letter from a child who, was in need also, not only themselves, and to know that they could do something for someone else became very empowering. It made them feel better. So doing something for others is one of the best ways to light up your life during the season. So, I'm going to just close up, but I want you to understand this concept that feelings are different, from emotions. We can, one's more physical, one can't be changed. And this is just sort of a wheel of different feelings. And realize, just don't judge yourself on those emotions. Don't be judgmental. And finally, the best way to handle stress is always through it. Don't avoid it. Figure out what you might be resisting. Stress is resistance to what is, and go through it. Take the challenge, manage it in the ways that we've discussed today, and find ways to light up your life. So that's it. That was me. That's my deal for today, guys. That's my message. I'm wishing you all a very happy holiday season and a happy and healthy new year.
We have a couple of questions, if we can. I said to everyone, Joy was asking, samples of mantras would be great. So I asked everybody to put in the chat any mantras that you have used in the past. Anita said, many meditation teachers comment on this quality of resistance to starting a meditation session. What else could I be doing? Even among those who can typically be quiet, but habitual practice is supposed to work, and the practice of doing it. Yeah, it's what we're talking about, Amy, is habit too. There's a couple of things, right, Sherry, that we can look at when there's resistance. One, it could be, as Sherry was saying, a trauma, right? And it brings up being still or being quiet, brings up that past trauma. And I think you're so respectful, Sherry, of neurodiversity, right?
Mhm.
Of how diverse we all are in our nervous system. And it really is true that we're highly individual. What works for one person and one organism does not necessarily work for another. And
Yeah.
that's why in positive psychology, it's so important. Sonia Lyubomirsky talks about the practices being the ones that we select, right? Versus you should have a gratitude journal. Well, what if gratitude doesn't work for you?
Mhm.
Then maybe having 3 things that you look forward to the next day. Try
Mhm.
that, right? Or
Yes.
maybe it's kindness and giving somebody a kindness, or maybe it's like um, finding one good thing in a day, right?
Find one
It,
good
it,
thing. Find one
mm-hmm,
good thing, and that turn it on its turn the negative on its head. I practice PAR, which I've talked about in the past: prepare, accommodate, and reframe. And I prepare in advance for stressors. I really try to do that. And what I'm preparing is not for the stressor because I can't control it. I'm trying to prepare my reaction to it.
beautiful.
That's
Like
what, and
Viktor Frankl.
that's what helps me, but that might not help everyone else. So, that helps me in my head, but I realize everybody's different. And those of us who are neurodiverse have, they have unique ways of making themselves feel better. Temple Grandin wrote about this. For her, it was the deep touch.
Mm-hmm.
She's just, wonderful in talking about her experience as a female with autism. So yeah.
And yeah, it's also, as we said, health is also individual. What works, we learn that from cancer, right?
Mm.
Each diagnosis is unique. Each treatment
Each
protocol
journey.
is unique. Each journey is unique. And we want to remember that how you respond to stress is unique too. So even just watching, gosh, that upset me. I wonder why. Like I was walking with my husband last night, and he said, I didn't realize there was someone behind me, and he said, "Go ahead," and he kind of gave me a little push. And what he was trying to do is prevent a log jam, right, in
Right,
there. But I was
right.
like, "Why are you pushing me?" And in that moment, I realized, wow, that kind of upset me. I felt like pushed around.
I
And then I
think,
realized, yeah,
I think a lot at this time of year, I just want to say this. A lot of us, if we're traveling, experience so much stress, even anticipatory stress, just anticipating the lines, the delays, the cancellations. And that's a good place to practice PAR. So prepare for those stressors that will arise or think will arise or could arise, and practice how you might cope with it through breathing or by centering yourself, how you might think about it differently, arrive really early, and how you want to respond. And not only the stress of it, but we live in a world in which so many of us feel a diminished sense of accomplishment, or we feel dehumanized by a world that's so technologically managed.
mhm.
And that results in a lot of stress.
Rachel, is that helpful? You wanted to know how to use PAR more. And then can you say more about the thinking task?
The thinking task. Was that
Diana, what
par?
do you mean PAR, or did you mean, Diana, you can unmute if you want. I'm
No,
not sure what you,
it was the last slide, the previous slide before the last Robert Frost slide. It said thinking, test, feelings, emotions.
Oh, yeah. So one of the thinking tasks, I'm sorry, I wanted to talk about this. The thinking task that I do is like understanding feelings and emotions are not, you can't always control them. You can control your response, and that, you know, you have a choice in what you want to do. And I want you, this is a task, it wasn't in the slide, but I play this, the what, not why game. And what you do is, instead of saying, why do I feel this way? Why do I feel depressed right now? Why do I feel stressed? Ask yourself, what do these times feel like? What do these times that feel that way have in common? What could I do about it? So move from the why to the what. So move to, what could I do that might make me feel better? What circumstance can I put myself in where I won't feel this way? Or what might help me feel, more in control? So move from thinking about why am I feeling this way, to more action oriented, what can I do about it? And that's what we call in cognitive behavioral practice, behavioral activation. But this is also cognitive activation. So move from why to what. What do these times have in common? What's similar about this scenario? And then what can I do about it?
Beautiful. Oh,
That
well,
was just
that's
someone calling me.
that was
But
just
anyway,
you.
does
We
that
just
make
had a
sense?
few things. Yes, of course. Beautiful. A million of the sincerest thanks. Technology is great, but impersonal, true. Yes, Anita, it's really true. Kelly McGonigal talks about changing our mindset to manage stress, and she has great research related to stress management and beliefs about stress. Yes, and Kelly has actually been on our call. She's lovely. We're hoping to get her back for our New Year's
I
Day
love Kelly.
celebration. Everyone, every New Year's Day, this year it'll be January 2nd, because of course January 1 is on Saturday. So we have a January 2 New Year's Day celebration. We'll be doing exercise. We'll be doing all kinds of classes. And Scott Mary Kaufman is going to be our keynote speaker at 10. So please join us for that, because we are going to mitigate stress. We're going to find out how we can start the new year from the experts in just a positive and joyful way. And we will also have a movie, and I think it might be the movie with Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama. If you haven't seen that yet, it's amazing. Thank you, everyone. And
Thanks, everyone.
just to tell us a little bit about what we're going to hear tonight. So I put it in the chat for everyone to come to
Tonight
our walk
is
around the brain.
Literally a walk around your brain. And I'm going to, in very easy to understand terms, explain how your brain is built and wired. And really, it's a very basic neuroanatomy kind of a webinar, but understanding how the brain evolved also. And it just will, give you a glimpse inside this universe inside of here.
And with great understanding comes great compassion.
Please
Thich
for
Nhat said.
yourself too.
Yes, exactly. Be well, everybody. It's Thursday. We'll see you next week. Hopefully, we'll see you tonight.
Thank you,
And
everyone.
thank you,
Remember,
Dr. Kelly.
Thank you.
take care of yourselves.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye.